Hello, Michael.
Hey, Jeffrey.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Well, if anybody, you know me the best. But for the audience, my name is Michael Serra. I was born in the U.S., but I was raised Japanese at home. I grew up in San Francisco and then moved down to San Jose for school and work. I spent 20 plus years in the semiconductor industry in a variety of different roles. And then 16 years ago, I started consulting on my own. So I own my own business. And my business is centered around helping executives, specifically Japanese executives, bridge the gap between Japan and Silicon Valley in a multitude of different areas, specifically technology, culture, and just understanding the way things are done in the US. And on the weekends, I volunteer in the San Jose Japantown community, and I'm on multiple boards. The Probably the biggest one that I'm involved with is the Japanese American Museum of San Jose, and I'm the board president there. I've been there, wow, since 2010, and joined their board shortly after I became a volunteer, and then now I'm the board president. I've been doing that for 5 years now. And with that role, I'm also on the Japantown Community Congress of San Jose's board, and there I chair their NCI program, which is their Nikkei Community Internship Program, which is targeting university students to help groom them to be future leaders in the community. And I'm also on the Japanese Chamber of Commerce of Northern California board, and I'm a vice president for the commerce division there. And Jeffrey, you know this because I always talk about doing things in three. And so, when I go out and volunteer, I look for three organizations that do things that are close and dear to my heart, but that also have a twofer. And what I mean by that is things that can also help me in other ways. And since I do a lot of my business between Japan and Silicon Valley, growing that network was important. And so the museum, the community congress, and the chamber just fit that really well. And more times than not, I will typically lead with my JAMS, or the Japanese American Museum of San Jose business card, because I want people to know about this history. I want people to learn about this. And so many people that I interact with don't know about this history. And so it gives me an excuse to reach back out to them in another situation, or if I haven't talked to them in a while and I have invited them to come to the museum, I can always use that as a lead in to say, hey, it's been a while. We'd love to invite you back to the museum. And so I do that a lot. And so it's been kind of a win-win from that respect, because I'm able to invite people to learn about this, and it also gives me an opportunity to reach back out to them. And so that's kind of who I am and what I do in a nutshell.
And one more thing, who are you to me?
So I'm your dad. You're my oldest. You're my oldest.
This is my father. Yeah, so that's awesome. And I can't even remember or count how many things or boards that you sit on. I just know you are heavily involved in the Japanese American community and are responsible for a lot that happens. So thanks for taking the time to do this.
Absolutely, absolutely. My pleasure.
Yeah, so the purpose of this call was for me to, I guess, share with you what something I had learned. And it was hard for me to learn because I resisted it in the sense that, like, the relationship you and I have now is, I don't know, like I would not have thought we would have this relationship as a child, right? Just it was different then than it is now. And like
Oh
now
yeah.
you are somebody I look up to, like a mentor, a father, a friend. Like I have so much respect and love for you, right? Um, and so it was like, okay, to have something from my past that in a sense affects me today in terms of like something I'm working through or something that's been kind of holding me back. Um, and then not knowing where it came from, just like, oh, this is, I kind of accepted, like, this is just a part of the way that I am. And then having the realization that like that actually came from childhood and how I was raised. And it's so interesting because it was like the way that I interpreted certain things, I think, is what solidified it and made it like a part of who I am. And so it's so interesting, and I can't wait to uncover this with you or share this. And so yeah, just first off, know that this is like, there's no blame, right? I'm not like, this is your fault I'm this way. This is you being you as a father, and then me being me as a kid and interpreting it, and I guess digesting it or just taking it in as the best that I knew how, right? And so having the realization now at like 32 and how it's actually held me back for probably like at least 12 years of my life.
Oh,
No, probably long. This 20. This is probably from like maybe high school on, really. But so let's see, where should I start? You want to start with the result or what I noticed about myself?
how about with what you noticed about yourself?
Okay.
And by the way, Jeffrey, I as a father, I really cherish the relationship, right? Because, like you said, I think growing up as a father, and your mom and I did this intentionally, right? Because growing up, you were kind of the maverick, and we say go right, you'd go left. We'd say sit down, you'd stand up. I mean, that was you. And so your mom and I intentionally always, I don't know if you remember these conversations we used to have, but we would sit you down at the dinner table, and it was always be your mom and I. We would never do it individually. And that was done intentionally because we were worried that if we didn't do that together, you would come back later and say, well, so and so said this. But if we were both there, then there would be none of that.
You're talking about like probably junior high, high school time, right?
Yeah, I mean, that whole youth, you kind of, yes.
I do remember that.
Yeah. And we always, when you do something wrong or if we were going to scold you, we would never tell you this was your punishment. We would always ask you. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Because we didn't want to define what punishment you should have. We wanted you to have that option. And
It's
nine
a very
times out of
parenting style that I don't think a lot of my friends can relate with.
but 9 times out of 10, you would probably have it was reasonable, right? So we were like, okay. And so that's kind of how we manage things. And then of course, Marcus, I think, watched you grow up. And so he was very mellow, right? I mean, just a mellow kid, and continues still to be, right? I mean, yeah. Anyway, please, I'd love to hear kind of.
So I mean that you almost touched on it, right? Like Marky is mellow.
Yes.
I also am relatively reserved.
Mm.
And like, so even like for Christmas or birthdays and stuff, right? Like when people give me a gift, this is my like main example of things. Like I just kind of like, thanks. And then I open it and I'm like, thanks. And then I'm just like, okay, stop looking at me, right? Like there's no like expressive like joy or anything, right? Like I don't have like a lot of enthusiasm with that, right? As opposed to maybe others. And I feel like you're kind of similar in that sense.
Yeah, it might be true.
We're just like, oh, thank you. But like some people, like, they'll jump up and down and celebrate, like this is the best thing ever, right? We don't do that.
No. Well, and I think I'm not sure if this is the reason why, but I want to feel like we try to stay even keel.
Yeah.
Because if you get something that you really wanted and you got, and then you got something that you really didn't want, you don't want to have this dramatic change.
What is this?
I know, right? Because then you offend the person that spent time looking for it and then thought that you
also just, that's like human nature. Like if we like something, yeah, let it be known. If you don't like something, yeah, let it be known. But it's that kind of that Japanese in us, that's the modesty or that reservation or don't embarrass yourself or don't offend anyone else.
Yes.
But in our human nature, we do have stuff we like and stuff we don't like.
Yes.
And expressing it is one way.
And Jeffrey, that is part of the culture, right? I mean, it's that is something that I grew up with.
Right.
And I think that rubbed off on you guys because that's kind of me.
Yeah.
And so, as I explained early on, even though I was born and raised in the US, at home, grandma and grandpa raised me Japanese.
Hmm.
And so, a lot of those traits just came through. And to you and Marcus, the same things probably came from that because that was my upbringing.
That, oh, well, that is definitely what I observed growing up, right? Like you guys,
Yeah.
you and mom were not super emotional in either way, right? You never got like excessively celebratory, and you never got excessively sad that I saw. And I don't know if
I
that
mean,
would,
again, try to keep it even keel, right?
yeah,
Absolutely. You know, when I lost Otosan, right? I mean, that was a tough time for me. And
when your dad passed away, right?
yeah, and I don't know if you remember, for me, that was really hard, right? And because I was with him the whole time. And I was at the hospital, and you know, even that last week, and I went up there every day and cared for him.
I think I was like 7 or so at the time, right? I was really young.
Yeah, yeah, you were still young, but you know, for me, I was right in the middle of you know, doing all kinds of crazy things at work and really, really busy. And my secretary told me, he says, "What are you thinking?" I remember this very, very well because you know I told her that you know he wasn't doing well, and she says, "Get out of here, go see your dad." And she just kicked me out of the office because you know that's the right thing to do, and I'm so happy she did that because it gave me the opportunity to then spend the time with him, and that literally was like the last you know week and a half before he passed, and and that was the kind of mindset I was in. Right, I was so just tied up with work, and I yeah, and so she kind of hit me on the head and says, get go see your dad."
Yeah. It's interesting too because I don't think I knew until I was about 25 that that was not your biological father.
Ah, well, because he raised us like his own.
Yeah, and you just never talked about that, or
Well,
I,
yeah, because to me, and that's also, I guess, you know, part of it, right? Is because really to me, he was like my father,
right,
and he
right,
was because I mean, he came into my life at a very young age, and so he was very influential to me, and so that yeah, and some of those traits that I have, right, in terms of giving back to the community and volunteering time, comes from him
mm, okay,
because he did that when I was growing up. I used to see him going to Pine United Methodist. He would be a guest, you know, reverend for a day, and you know, I see him doing that, right? Very active in the church community,
yeah,
and that rubbed off on me. And then I see that in you, right? Because you were active in college,
right, yeah.
NCU, and fraternity and
NSU, no, yeah, Nikkei Student Union.
NSU. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So let's see. Okay, that was the expressiveness was one thing.
Hmm.
Another thing that I noticed was also that there was a disconnect with like I guess my body and my mind and the
Hmm.
ability to physically express myself. So like you've always talked a lot with your hands, right? But even like and that's something I think I picked up along the way somewhere with just conversations and stuff. But there was always a disconnect between like when I'm in a situation or whatever, I typically will just observe. Like I
Hmm.
see myself as an observer where I will not participate openly in like anything physical. Like if people are dancing, I will watch. If
Hmm.
people are celebrating, I will watch. Right. It was like this disconnect from my ability to kind of move. Like I don't know if I've ever seen you dance.
Are you serious?
Do you dance?
Yes.
Okay. Mom, I don't think I've ever seen dance.
She did too, but not as much. And so, come on. Well, we went on the cruise. You don't remember, huh?
Call it. But yeah, so that was something like, yeah, every now and then it'll come out. But really there was like a hard reservation on expressing myself that way or really putting it out there that way.
Hmm.
Um, And so those were two of the like long time, I guess, traits that I had picked up from the things I had um, come to learn, or how I interpreted certain things at an even younger age than what we referenced so far, right?
Mm.
Not prior to like junior high. I'm thinking probably elementary school and before that. Um, so again, my whole like this realization I was super resistant to, because again, right, you and mom were always very loving, you were always very supportive, you provided for Marky and I in more ways than we could even thank you for, right? And so in my mind, like there was no trauma in my childhood. I'm like, no,
Mm.
absolutely not, right? And especially, and again, like comparison is a dangerous thing, right? But when I compare myself to other people who have significant trauma from their upbringing, right? Um, I'm very lucky in that way, where it's like you guys were nothing but great to us. And so I had this resistance of like, no, there's no trauma from my childhood, right? Like my parents were both there. They loved us, like they did everything they could to care for us, right? And so like as things were surfacing, and like this realization of like, yo, why am I disconnected from my body? Why don't I express myself in the way that I truly feel, right? Because
Mm.
I have those feelings, but they stay inside. They don't come out.
Mm. Mm.
And it was that there was a disconnect from my mind and my body.
Mm.
And so just kind of through the program I've been participating in, um, it flushed some of that out, where it was like, dig deeper, go further back into your past to stuff you don't really remember, but continuing to just asking the question, why,
Mm.
and then getting to the root of it. And it was like, wow, okay, like maybe it has to do with my dad. And it was like, but I don't think so. Like, I love that man. Like, no, there's no trauma there. Leave me alone. And it's like, but why? But why? But why? And I was like, okay, well, maybe this thing. And I was like, and then it clicked. And essentially, like, because you were always around, right? You were home, you lived with us, but you also traveled a lot,
Yeah, I
right?
did.
You were in Japan a lot, you were at work a lot. And so really in infancy and like the early stages of life, mom raised us.
Oh yeah.
And you were there, but not in a like an emotional capacity, I guess, is how I
Mm.
perceived it. Like you were there to provide, but like my interactions with you, I don't remember up until like maybe we started playing video games together.
Mm.
That's like one of the main memories I have of us interacting. And outside of that, I just remember getting yelled at. Right? Like Marky and I would run around the house and we'd be playing. And then you'd yell at us and be like, hey, keep it down, or stop running, or don't jump on furniture, or like do things a certain way because you were working and it was interrupting work.
Yeah, that could have been.
And then so it became like, I guess my interpretation of it was like, don't show emotion, right? Like dad's working, be quiet. Don't be joyous. Don't run around and scream and have fun. Like he's working. It's time to just shut all that down.
Ah.
So my interpretation as a kid was like, just suppress all that. And there's a super key memory I have of jumping down the stairs, and you
Oh.
yelled, and you're like, hey. And then like my response to that was I started singing the song by Arthur. It was like a cartoon of like an anteater, and it starts out like, hey, what a wonderful kind of day where we can learn to work and play. And I started singing that. And then mom, Marky, and even you started laughing. And I was like, okay, cool. Like he went from mad to like, now we're kind of celebrating and laughing about this. And I think that's probably where like my sense of humor comes from, where there was like a positive reaction to like a darker situation where it's like we were about to get yelled at and in trouble for, running around playing and jumping off stairs. And then that kind of flipped it. But
That's cool.
I realized that it created a disconnect between what I'm feeling inside and my ability to express it.
Mm.
Um, and so it's super interesting to not have that realization till now,
Mm.
like literally this year, where I connected those dots, and now it's like I've been able to connect back with all of myself,
Mm.
where now my mind and my body understand that was essentially a trauma, that like it was like a protective method that no longer exists. Like I told myself, do this to protect yourself from getting in trouble, right? Don't get
Uh,
yelled at, like a survival instinct. And it's like that no longer serves me, and it holds me back from so much. Like when I go to weddings and stuff, I'm kind of like, I'll dance a little, and then I'm like, this is uncomfortable. People are looking, or whatever I tell myself, because in my mind, I'm still thinking of something else, right? And
uh,
so it's interesting how our mind works, and having that realization of like this stemmed from like way back.
wow.
And then yeah, so let me pause there real quick. Like what are your thoughts on all this?
So Jeffrey, I don't think I've ever shared this with you, but we had a hard upbringing because before my mom remarried, obviously she got was divorced, and when that happened,
And this is
my
from
mom had
about your biological dad.
by my from my biological dad. So
Okay.
when I was very young, right, they divorced,
Yeah.
and so I have memories of my your uncle, my older brother and sister having to take jobs to help support the family, and then my mom would do housework, right, to make ends meet. And so I saw that, I lived that.
Yeah.
And because I was the youngest, my older brother and sister kind of sheltered me from a lot of that because they did a lot of the heavy lifting. And since I was the youngest, and I couldn't do anything. But I remember that vividly to the point where I didn't want to have a family and have them go through that same experience.
Right.
And so because of that, I worked super hard in both school and work to make sure that I could provide for the family and never have
Yeah.
you guys experience any of that. Because I'll be honest, right? There were days when we would not have that much food because we were struggling. And that feeling just, I'll never forget that.
Right.
But that experience really drove me hard.
Yeah.
And so that is the reason why I wanted to do as much as I could and as fast as I could, right, in both my career and for the family.
And then
And
that's why you've excelled in those areas.
it really
Your
is.
work.
I was driven, man. I was
Yeah.
totally driven, and every opportunity I could get, right, I was talking to executives and talking
Yeah.
to I had a mentor in at work, and I seeked that out, right, because I had this plan in my head, and I always had a roadmap of where I wanted to go within my career, and I would share that with people just so that they knew this is what I wanted to do. And the crazy thing about that was people would give me feedback, and it was very, very instrumental in the success I had in my career because as I was sharing that, they would give me feedback. I would modify the roadmap and then keep working it, and then drive. And I got attention. People recognized that this is what he wanted to do. Let's give him the opportunity, and I got those opportunities.
You brought him into your vision and said, this is what I'm trying to do. Either help me with it or tell me where it can be improved.
Exactly. Or what am I doing wrong, or how can I improve? And everybody was more than happy to give me that feedback and literally pull me through the organization, right? So that is the reason why, unfortunately, right, when I came home, I was still driven and doing a lot of that work at home when I should have been spending more time with you guys. But I'm also grateful, right, because mom
Yeah.
was able to spend the time with you and raise you, because you're right. I mean, I traveled a lot for work, and because of that, I couldn't always be there for you guys. But I wanted to make it such that mom could stay home, right, and could be there for you guys as I was traveling, because I never wanted you to have that experience that I had, where you come home and there was nobody home.
Mm. And then
And
also
so
your biggest fear was having us live through what you lived through, right?
exactly. I never wanted to have you guys have that experience, and so that's the reason why it was the reason. That's the reason what drove me to where I am today, and yeah, and some of
Yeah.
those experiences and successes. And I wanted to provide for the family, such that you guys would never experience that. And when you tell me that, and when I'm hearing that, I mean, I'm happy to hear that it worked. But at the same time, if I could go back in time and fix that, there's some things for sure I would love to have changed, altered, which I now realize. And so I appreciate you sharing these with
I
me.
don't I don't think I would go back and change anything though.
Well, but for example, right? I mean, I did I put work as the number one priority, and I shouldn't have. You know, I should have put family as the number one priority.
But also, you were still there, right? It's
Yeah,
not like
but
you're completely absent. And yeah, it would have been nice to spend more time, but I still have a lot of memories like of us spending time together, right? So it's not like you were out of the picture. Like, one of these scars is from when we went to Great America.
oh, I will never forget that.
Yeah.
Never forget
That
that.
kid kicked me,
It was that gym. It was that silly gym, and
the rope monkey thing that you climb up.
somebody and some older kid, was climbing it. It's like he shouldn't have been up there. And I yelled at the attendant. And I says, "You guys should be watching this because my kid got kicked."
Right. But like, hey, we did that together. And I remember we
Yeah,
played a lot of games together, little video
yeah,
games, some
yeah.
board games and stuff. So yeah, it's not like yeah. I wouldn't change anything because it brought us to where we are today, right? Like
Sure, sure.
your success, my understanding of all this from the path I've taken. So I wouldn't change a thing. Um, yeah, and I'm glad that we get to have this talk now, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, come on, as a dad, you don't know how happy I am, right? I mean, that we have this kind of relationship and we can talk about this. And Jeffrey, you can always reach out to me, and I love, talking to you about kind of what your aspirations are, because that's just for a father, that's just going full circle, man. That's the best. Hey,
Especially
you want
where
to
it landed, right? Like
yeah,
you
no, I mean, well, you want to hear another thing that really touched me? I don't know if I ever shared this with you.
Okay. Yeah.
It was the first time you bought me lunch.
Oh, I do remember that. You bring that up. Because
Oh my God.
you're like, you can count on one hand how many times I bought you food.
Yeah, but for dad, right? For dad to have, you know, our son buy us a meal is just it's just like, oh my God.
That's a very different experience than a lot of other people, though, right?
I don't know.
From my experience, right? A lot of my friends, they take care of their parents.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay.
So for you
Yeah.
to like be able to count it on one hand and have these memories of it, like on one hand, I do need to do that more, but I also know you always yell at
No,
me.
no, no. My expectation is not that for sure,
Right.
right? So, but it's just yeah. For me as a father, right? That's just like wow. Okay.
Another interesting thing that just during this conversation I noticed, because I know we've talked about the rule of threes before and how it's a
Yes.
double-edged sword, right?
Yeah, I
Um,
know.
Now I understand even more where it comes from, where it's those contingencies are again to prevent the thing that you are most afraid of.
Oh yeah.
Where it's like, yo, I don't want you to have to struggle, so have three, so that if one
Exactly.
fails, you have two backups.
Jeffrey, I'm sure I've shared this with you before, but as I transitioned between job to job,
Mhm.
I would always make sure I had three opportunities before I decided.
Yeah, and
And so
that served you,
it
right?
did, it served me, right? I mean, because how do you know if that's the best deal unless you have something to compare it with?
Right.
And so I would talk to, headhunters, I would talk to friends, and I would seek out multiple opportunities just
But
so that I could set a benchmark, right? And, unfortunately, going to a startup, and I had to do that multiple times, and I got tired of doing that, right? And so when the opportunity came for me to go out on my own and become a consultant, oh my God, it was the best thing I could have ever done. And, now looking back, I almost, kick myself thinking, God, I should have done it sooner. But I think there's also part of me that says I needed to have that experience before I could flip the switch and become a consultant and have kind of the credibility to do that. And so it all worked out, I guess.
yeah,
And I'm happy where I am.
and I understand the value in it in certain circumstances, but I think I explained this before to you during one of our lunches. But I remember it was I didn't apply it in the right context all the time because I took it as a rule of thumb for everything.
Yeah, no, you have to. Yeah. And
And
to
then
your
it
point, right? I mean,
became
you refined it because you need to focus.
right.
And if you can focus, then just, yeah, do one thing at a time. For me, I like to have, a couple things, I'm juggling at the same time. And so I tend to have, multiple projects going on at the same time. As you know, I have multiple clients going on at the same time. It's just my thing. I thrive on controlled chaos.
Yeah. And I think you learn how to navigate it, right? Where it's like me jumping into things, it was doing three things at once at a third capacity. And so I
Ah,
wasn't establishing one and then a second and then a third.
yeah. No, I
Trying
hear
to do
you.
it all concurrently. And
So
that's
so
what,
what's forced me to do is become very organized.
yeah.
And so I have to, I mean, I think you see in my calendar, right? I literally color code my calendar by clients so that I don't crisscross. And it just helps me switch gears, right? So when I'm in client A, I'm in client A mode. When I go to client B, I'm in client B mode, and and so on. Because otherwise, it's hard for me to separate that if I don't.
Mm,
And what I'm learning, right? And as you know, I went back to school because I want to improve, right? Never stop learning. And even at my age, there's so much more to learn. And what I'm learning is that there's so many habits that I have that I need to break.
mm,
And
yeah.
because those habits are making me inefficient. And so I have a study buddy that I have weekly calls with, and he made it pretty clear to me that email is a time sink, and yet I'm constantly, if I get an email, I check it right away. And he
Uh,
says, no, you can't do that. And so this last weekend, as part of my coursework, they said do opposites, and they forced us to think about doing things differently so that you can try to break some of these habits.
right,
And so
right.
for one day, I didn't look at any email. I was having withdrawals.
You have an
But
addiction to email.
right, I mean, it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But I resisted it just to see what it would be like,
Yeah.
and it was okay. And
So
so
would it be better to like set aside like an hour in the morning to go through all your emails at once rather than all day throughout the day, anytime it comes in?
exactly, and that's what my study buddy said was that you should do emails in the morning, one time after lunch, and then in the evening, and don't look at them anymore. So what I did was I turned off, because you know how I get an email and it pings,
Yeah. Notification. Like
and so I turned it off.
yeah.
Because it drives me. I mean, it gets my attention. I'm looking at it, and it is so disruptive. It's
Yeah.
so disruptive. But I've got into this mentality or mindset that no, if there's an email, I got to respond to it. And
Right.
so again, I'm learning, right? I'm still learning, and I'm trying to become more efficient. But that's also why I do a lot of work off at different times of the day, because I can be much more productive.
Mm,
And working with Japan, my day starts at 4 o'clock in the evening or in the afternoon. And so I'm usually up late.
okay.
But the nice thing about it is all the US email starts to slow down.
Oh, right. Okay.
And
So
so
it's
I'm
almost
able
like
to
a swing
focus.
shift, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm able to focus and get my work done because I'm not getting, pinged in the middle of the night, and then I can respond. So, you know, I'm shifting some of those habits and learning from that for sure.
What's another, I guess, bad habit that you've become aware of?
Um, that is definitely one of them. What's another bad habit? God, I can't think of anything that comes. Well, I mean, there are plenty.
Interesting, right? For you, it's email. For me, it's any form of communication. If
Well,
someone
it's,
reaches out, mhm. What were you
no,
gonna say?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, emails, text messages, all that, right? But what we call them CYAs, cover your aspirations.
Oh yeah.
What my CYA said was let people know what your priorities are. Meaning, emails are something that you'll look at 3 times a day.
Okay.
If they have something important, have them call you
Right. Right. Right.
or text message so that they know that there's levels of priority. If it's not something important, then put them on CC. But what happens then is he won't look at it until he's got time.
Right.
If there's something that you have to act to or have an action to, then put me in the two, because otherwise we'll ignore it.
I can relate to that in the sense of not emails, but just messages and prioritizing things, right?
Yeah,
What I learned for myself was that it was actually a coping mechanism. in a sense that like I had to reply to things immediately because I felt like it gave me purpose. But
Jeffrey, you're yeah. I'm the same. We're a victim to that.
and so it's interesting that I once I had awareness of that and kind of worked through it a little bit, I have different boundaries now.
Yeah, and
And I
and
have
that's
healthier boundaries.
and that's what I need to set. And what I'm learning is, at the museum we hired a brand new executive director, and so we went from an all volunteer organization to now we've got 1.5 paid staff people. But what I've learned from them is they will, and they're very good about this, is they have schedules, right? Where these are days that they work and these are days that they don't work.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm learning from them because on their off days, they'll put it on a calendar so that we know that, they're out of the office.
Yeah, like setting that
And
time where it's like this doesn't mean I'm available. This means I'm occupied with my own things.
exactly, exactly. So
Yeah.
what I started doing was I put the same thing for when I travel. Because now I'm, out of country and I'm going to be slow to respond. And so I did this for the first time. Well, and plus the pandemic didn't help. So when I was traveling to Japan, I put an out of office notification for all museum emails so that people would know that I was out of country and that I'll respond when I get back.
Okay.
And that helped me a lot because then it didn't put pressure on me, right? To have to worry about the museum things when I'm working. Because before I would drop everything, right, to respond to those emails.
They're separate, right? It's totally separate.
Yeah, but now that we have paid staff and they're helping us with the day-to-day operations, it's taking that burden away. It's taking the burden away from me, and I don't have to deal with that as much as I had before.
So question, how much time do you have with all of the responsibilities, all of the work and everything? Like how much time do you have left for yourself?
Well, as you know, I love to swim, so I put on my calendar, 3 times a day. Or I'm sorry, 3 times a week when I have my swim lessons, right? So I block that time out and I do that religiously.
Okay.
And then of course, I love the golf, and so when I can, I block the time out to do that. And so that becomes kind of my time, right?
Yeah.
And then, when I travel with your mom or we're going to do something like that, then I block the time out. So, yeah, I mean, as long as I know ahead of time, right, I can block that out. And your mom's good about letting me know. So if we're going to be traveling, then I block that time out and I don't set any meetings. And so it works really well. And
Yeah.
I have to be careful about this, but, going to Japan, it's work, but I also enjoy going.
Yeah.
And you know, right? I mean, so I have a lot of friends there, and I'm active. And when I'm in Japan, I make sure I have every lunch and dinner with somebody,
Mm,
work or friend, someone.
yeah.
And on the weekends, if mom's not with me, then I'm looking for opportunities to go golfing or traveling or seeing people that are farther away, and I'll make that trip and I'll do it.
Mm,
So it's so I get. I mean, it's work, but I'm also enjoying myself.
right, right.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm just seeing so many parallels in the way that we operate and do things. And it's so interesting. But I also know that our upbringing is different and our life experience has been different. And so I'm curious, like with everything I've learned with this program, like would you be interested in going through it yourself where you get to figure out some of this stuff? Because it
Maybe. I
helped
mean,
me
yeah. I mean,
understand a lot of the things we've talked about, and it gave me at least an understanding where I can begin to rewire certain things where it's like this doesn't need to be my automatic response. I can choose this, but for the longest time it's always been default. And
mhm.
so understanding it, even just having those boundaries, like I told myself I couldn't have boundaries because I would have so much guilt if someone called me and really needed something and I wasn't there.
Mm,
And that was a burden I carried where it was like I lost sleep.
mm,
I had my phone constantly on. I was constantly checking
mm,
things. And it was like, how often does that actually happen? And I had anxiety, like it created anxiety, right?
mm.
And so it's just I'm wondering, because I hear so much similarity in the way that you operate and do things, where it's like, yeah, that's me to a T, and it makes sense because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? And so it's like, yeah, like, if you have some free time where it's like, a couple weekends, like I wonder what you would unlock from the same process and take away from it, and then us being able to debrief and share that. Because my friend that kind of brought me and introduced me to this, we do the same thing, and his takeaways are completely different because he and I are such different people.
Sure,
And you and
sure.
I having similarities but different backgrounds. I'm wondering what that would look like, and it's done nothing but improve, right? Like, I don't know if I think I know I told you, but my whole life
Yeah,
with my
yeah.
nails,
Yeah,
they're
good for
all
you.
they're all back now. Because the anxiety has gone away. The
Yeah, yeah.
understanding
That's
of
huge. That's
that, right?
huge. Yeah.
And so, with all of the stuff on your plate, I'm sure there's times when it's like it becomes overwhelming, and it's just like, okay, what do I do? But you also, like you said, you thrive in, was it controlled chaos?
Controlled chaos. Yeah,
Yeah.
Jeffrey, it's crazy, but I thrive on that controlled chaos
Would
because
you be open to another explanation, though?
yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, I'm always willing to learn, right? So if there's something that I can take away from that experience, then absolutely, I'm open to it.
Because, right, you, like, again, right, like I had a lot of narratives where I said this was because of this, but
Hmm.
then not realizing it's like maybe you don't thrive on controlled chaos, but maybe it's like a coping mechanism or a defense mechanism or something along those lines, where it's something we learned or taught ourselves that served us at a certain point in time, but now things have changed and it's different. And so now it's going back and reflecting and seeing, is this the best way that I can optimize my time and myself? Or is this actually detrimental in some way?
Hmm.
Or maybe you are spreading
Yeah,
yourself too thin, right? I
yeah.
don't know.
I mean, I guess what is it that I enjoy about it? When I go to Japan and I have my schedule, pretty much set and it's all booked up, I enjoy it, right? I mean, because I'm getting to see people, I'm having, great meals with them, I'm having a great exchange with them,
Yeah.
and 9 times out of 10, there's a takeaway, right? And
What
and the
happens
other
if
thing,
someone cancels or doesn't go according to plan?
oh, that happens. What I'll do is I'll try to see if I can't find someone else that is available,
Mm. And if
and
no one's
I'll swap.
available, what do you end up doing? Like, how you
Well,
said
then,
every meal is scheduled.
yeah, I mean, this last trip, I had someone who had to cancel, and so I basically, reached out to someone else, and luckily they were available, and bam, we connected, and it turned out to be a great exchange and dinner, and so it was just, yeah, it's funny, right? Because it was by chance, because I wouldn't have had that opportunity if it hadn't canceled, right? So it's funny how things
No,
happen.
that is great. But it's also, you said luckily, right? Luckily someone else was available. But what if no one was available?
Well, then I would have looked for something close by where I was staying, and again, serendipity. But I'm not shy, so I can go to a restaurant or something, and I'll strike a conversation with the chef, or if I'm feeling like I want to find some people, because Japan has all these little pubs and things, so I'll find one of those places and stick my head in there. Especially if it's a small town and there's a small little place like that, I will seek those out.
Yeah.
And
So
and I've done that, right, where I'm looking at the sign, I'm like, and then they've got karaoke or something in it, and I can hear English songs going on, and I'll poke my head in,
yeah.
and then before I know it, I know everybody that's coming and visiting, and then I become a repeat customer.
So that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I've had that happen to me, right? It's because, as you know, I like to use Airbnb, and when I go back to the same Airbnb, I get to know the restaurants and those kind of places that are close by the Airbnb. I will go back and visit.
Yeah. Um, can I share something?
Yeah,
Because there is so much value in everything you just said, right? Where it's like that perspective on approaching things is great. But I'm also hearing so much of myself in that, where it's like, okay, when one plan falls through, that means a time slot in my calendar opened up. Let me fill it with somebody else. Let me go interact with someone else. Let me go do this instead. And it does always lead to other opportunities, or come like just crossing paths with people. And
Yes.
that
Yes.
side of it, I 100% understand and agree with and get. But also the part that I had a realization about, and I don't want to assume this for you, but for me, what I realized was this was a huge coping mechanism, because I did not want to be alone. And so when you
Ah.
said like,
Yeah.
luckily,
Yeah.
right? Like luckily
Yeah. Oh
someone
yeah. Oh yeah.
was
Oh yeah.
able to fill that slot. And it's like,
And yes, I'm the same way, right? I mean, because I find that it's a waste for me to be all the way in Japan and having a meal by myself when I could be having a meal with somebody.
can I challenge that?
Well, it's true. I mean, that's just my mindset, right? My
Right.
mentality is that, God, I'm not going to go all the way over there and have breakfast and lunch by myself. I mean, why wouldn't I take the time to just reach out to friends that I have there and set those up?
So
And
me challenging that, what, like, play through the hypothetical scenario of, what if you did? What if you went there by yourself and had this amazing meal at a place that was far away that you typically wouldn't go to by yourself?
mhm, okay.
What is the downside to that? And you said that, okay, you're not
Well,
sharing
because
it,
I want to share that experience with somebody, right?
but
I
what
don't want
happens
to. I
if
mean,
you share it with yourself? Like, it's just you and that experience.
it's just something. I don't know. I guess I love the conversation, right? I mean, I just. I mean, yeah. I feel like it's so much better with so much better to share it with somebody.
Again, I don't want to assume, but I'm seeing myself in everything you're saying, right? And is it is
But
it
Jeffrey, it's so.
possible that, and again, we, as different as we are, we have some similar pain points.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I
And
mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, if I have only 30 minutes to grab a bite because I'm in between meetings, I'm gonna go off and do it by myself. I can't find somebody to eat with. I'm gonna
yeah,
do that. But again, I try to plan my days so that I have the lunch and dinners already set, and then if I have to squeeze a meeting, I give myself enough time to be able to transit between those. And you know how I am. I everything's about planning, right? So I already have in my calendar people I'm going to meet this next trip coming up that I want to reach out to.
mhm,
And then I even have a list of people that I didn't reach out to or couldn't reach out to this last time, but I contacted them anyway to say, hey, I'm traveling again, and I won't be able to meet you this time, but I just wanted to say hi, how you doing? Next time I come into town, let's grab a beer.
mhm.
That way I've set the stage so that next time I reach out to them, they know I'm back in town and we can get
I
together.
get all of that, right? But now we're talking about something else now.
Oh, but literally I try to preamble it all, right, so that
Right.
the success rate is very high.
Um, okay. I'm not going to push that anymore, but it
I
was
think
what I
I
meant
think
by pain points, right? You and I have experienced similar traumatic events. Actually, you significantly more in the last 5 years, right?
oh yeah.
We've lost a lot of family,
Oh yeah,
and not in just a normal way.
yeah. And
And
that's why
so,
for me, it's all about that relationship, right? And
yes,
it and I want to foster the relationship with people that I enjoy hanging out with,
mhm,
because I don't want to miss that opportunity if something were to happen to them, right? And I'm like, oh darn it, I should have reached out to them, or oh darn it, I don't want to ever have to say that.
yeah, and I agree. But is there
Yeah.
also potentially, and again, this was something I uncovered myself, where I was literally running from being alone because it hurt, because I couldn't handle it,
Hmm.
because then I was alone with my thoughts, and it was like, yeah, there, some fucked up shit has happened. I don't
Hmm.
know how to process it. I didn't process it the right way, and I ran from it,
Uh,
and it
but
was
but so
coping.
Jeffrey, when I run into an issue or run into a problem, I usually reach out to someone who I can console with.
Mm.
So I have friends that are also consultants, and we're always sharing ideas, and we're always, I will ask them for advice, and they do the same with me. So they'll call me up and say, "Hey, Michael, I got this new gig. What do you think?" And so we bounce ideas off of each other. So if I run into a problem with one of my clients, I'll reach out to my buddies and ask them for
But
advice.
okay, you jump to work.
I'm sorry, but the whole point is, so if I get into a dark space,
Yeah.
then I'll reach out to someone, whether it's work, family, whatever.
And then what do you talk about?
Well, I what I'm feeling, right? Because
Okay.
if I'm down because of something, then the conversation helps me to come back up.
Mm.
And so I do that quite a bit, right? So, yeah. And then of course, if there's something that I need to talk to about family, then I just go to your mom,
Mm.
and then I can get her opinion, get her advice. What do you think? We're trying to do this. Does this make sense? And then she gives me a different perspective, right?
I guess it's part of it too is like I don't see this side of things, right? Like I don't see you ever talking about how you feel.
Ah,
It's
I
always
do. Yeah. I mean, yeah. One of the things I one of the things I love traveling with your mom is, especially just taking a drive, right? Turn the radio off, and your mom and I just chat.
I do remember that like on road trips as a kid.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. We can talk for hours, and we do, and that's the best time for us, right? Because there's no interruptions, and it's just her and I, and so we travel really well together. I mean, it's just crazy. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, we've been together forever, so we're good, and your mom is so organized that you know I can just leave it all up to her, and she will take care of it. I
Yeah.
mean,
Plans pretty well.
she's awesome. She's awesome, and I mean, you know your mom. I mean, but I love traveling with her because it's again now I have someone. If when we go to Japan together, right? Yeah, I will make time so that we can get together, or what we then try to do is have dinners with friends that are mutual friends, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because then it's fun for all of us. And she's met quite a few of
She
mine.
didn't want to go to one of your work meetings.
Well, I know, but now she's gotten to know some of them really well, right?
Yeah.
So and now they have kids, and so we're gonna go meet with them, and it takes it to another level. It is work, but it's not work.
Yeah.
So and we have those connections, and we'll definitely connect and reach out to them. And then we have folks that lived here for a while, and then they went back to Japan, that we'll connect with as well.
Yeah. Let's see. I know we are coming up on close to our hour. I think we have about 5 more minutes, so just keeping time. But yeah, this has been awesome actually because we got a lot deeper than most of our other conversations where it's strictly business. Like we're
I know. And so I appreciate you reaching out, and yeah.
any final thoughts or shares?
Jeffrey, I'm really proud of what you're doing, man.
Thank you.
Come on, as a dad, right? I mean, that's the best thing that you could gift your dad or your parents is, yeah. So, have these aspirations, have these goals, and then, seeing them through.
Yeah.
And then
This
if you and I could work together, man,
oh yeah. We're gonna figure out a
that's
way to, right?
that's just icing on the cake, man. That's just icing on the cake. And I'll be there for you. So whatever you need, and whatever I can provide, I'd love to do that. So
it's just for me it's interesting because it's like I feel like before my mentality before was like I've tried so many times and I've failed so many times. But again, it was all a learning process, right? Because
yeah, oh yeah,
all of the times I failed made this time the startup smoother. Like I knew what to do, I knew where to go, I knew what I needed. And again, now it's more aligned with the ikigai, right? Like I feel so much purpose with following this path versus anything I did in the past. It was like, how do I make a buck? How am I going to make money from this? Right. That was the complete focus.
yeah.
And now it's more like, yo, like this has a deeper purpose than paying bills. Like this will change lives. This will help people get out of their heads the way I was so stuck in mine, where it's like everything I touched and tried to do fell apart because I was self-sabotaging.
Mm. And Jeffrey, I mean, you know, I use that same model.
Yep.
When
I learned this from you.
when it's something you're passionate about, it's no longer work,
Yeah.
and it's the best, man. Well, so when you find that sweet spot, yeah, it's just
I'm in it. I got like 3 of the segments. I just get that 4th one in there.
there you go, and then it'll come,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then you'll be like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
That's why I love what I do, right? I mean, I have that luxury of doing what I really love to do. And so what I feel obligated to do is now give back to the community. And that's the reason why I spend the time volunteering.
Question: how old were you when you started to consult?
16 years ago.
Okay, because I remember you had a lot of different jobs, and then you went from a lot of different startups.
Yeah, I crashed and burned so many times to startups. And then, you know, the worst part of that was getting together with family. And it's always the end of the year because, you know, startups are looking at their books because they want to clean it up for the new year. And so November, man, that's the worst. And so what happens, right? Thanksgiving, we all get together for family gatherings. Michael, how's it going? How's your job? You know, I'm like, yeah, I got laid off again.
Yeah,
And so,
I remember that. Yeah,
yeah, it gets old really, really quick. And so,
it's discouraging in a sense, right?
oh man, it's so depressing. And then, you know, I'm looking for a job, and you know, every year it's the same thing, especially with startups, because they only have about you know, maybe a 10-month runway, and run out of funds, and so you got to look for another job, and I'm like, oh.
I feel like
But
that every
you know,
time I run into people where it's like every time I've seen them and they ask, "What am I up to?" It's like I had a different job. So what are you doing now? Like, okay, I'll see you in 3 months with something different. And I'm like, no, this is the one now.
so it's the same, right? I mean, that's like my experience, and but now that I've been consulting, I mean, I've been 16 years doing this. It's been a great gig, and then the other part that I love is the flexibility,
Oh yeah,
because now I have, you know, more time to do the other things that I love to do, which is, you know, supporting the community and supporting the youth, and
right,
making sure that we can sustain this going forward.
right.
And that, you know, again, now it's, for me, it's trying to figure out what is my new purpose in life and what is the legacy that I want to leave behind. Of course, besides you and Marcus.
Right, for you.
But what's my own legacy, right? What do I want to be remembered as? And so that's the part that I'm working on right now.
Yeah. All right. Well, holding time. We are out of time, but thank you
All right.
so much. This has been awesome.
Thank
And
you, Jeffrey.
we have to do this again.
Hey,
This will be
anytime.
the first step of our collaboration, so one of many. But thank you, Dad. I love you.
Love you too. You know it.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop the recording now.